I'm breathing underwater, I'm weightless through space. I'm soaring like an eagle all over this place. Creatures most will never see are waiting there to look at me, and all I gotta do is breathe underwater.
Our story opens in 1945, about a month before Japan surrendered and ended World War II. An American submarine called the Tetra is in trouble.
They're locked into us, sir. We've got to surrender, Skipper. Blow the tanks. Take us up. Our panic from you, Hill. Get out of here. Get back to your station.
Your eyes don't deceive you? There's a Japanese officer on board. The sub found him floating in the ocean and rescued him. Taking the time to do that allowed this ship to find them, and it seems to have an endless supply of depth charges.
Grady, stop your engines. Spill all the oil you can. Now hear this. All hands, stay at your stations. No walking and no noise.
If you were commanding a warship, determining whether you had destroyed a submarine or not was iffy. Most often, an oil slick with some debris was considered enough to call it a kill. That's what Lieutenant Ryan is doing. But it wasn't always a kill. The German sub U-869 engaged some American ships near Gibraltar early in 1945. The initial American Navy report said it wasn't damaged, but later on, a bean counter in Washington changed it to a kill, even though there was very little, if any, evidence of it. Then in 1991, a group of technical scuba divers discovered the wreck of U-869 not far off the coast of New Jersey. So that bean counter didn't do anybody any favors. At the time of his report, the sub was still active and within shouting distance of the American coast. Here's a message to all such bean counters. If you're not sure, shut up. The depth charges are everywhere and the boat is filling with water. Depth charges were the preferred method for dealing with submarines because there wasn't much they could do to retaliate. It's possible to survive an explosion on land because air compresses and absorbs some of the force of the blast. Water doesn't do that. An explosion underwater, even if it doesn't hit the sub, will cause a concussion strong enough to do the kind of damage we're seeing. The charge might as well be hitting the sub because the impact of the water it displaces is just as dangerous as the explosion itself. Fear not, my friends, all will be explained. After the opening credits, we find out what the bottle has to do with anything.
This seems incredible, sir.
Oh, it's authentic, Chip. The Navy lab has given it every test.
Could the Navy clue us into the source?
They've combed the whole area with subs, surface ships, planes, and come up with nothing. So, they want our help. Chief Sharkey.
Yes, sir.
Recall all Liberty parties. Have the crew ready for departure at 0600.
Aye, aye, sir.
To do that, Sharkey will have to embarrass himself and...
I'm starting to realize I shouldn't be up here with you without a chaperone.
Oh, it's a little old-fashioned, isn't it?
I'm an old-fashioned girl.
You realize, of course, the chaperone wouldn't allow me to kiss you again. Like this.
You have to love Hollywood kissing.
Yes, Chief, what is it?
Orders from Admiral Nelson, Skipper. You're to report to dockside immediately. We shove off at 0600.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
You'll need to do this very quickly, and I have a feeling she's not going to appreciate that, sir.
At least my chaperone was imaginary.
That's not a chaperone, ma'am. That's a party crasher. Let's get back to that bottle. There was a message inside it. A fisherman found it off the coast of one of the Hawaiian Islands and brought it to the Navy Department. It's for real. Every test they have confirms that both the bottle and the message are authentic.
It's written on the official stationery of a submarine, the USS Tetra.
Tetra? I don't recall any sub by that name.
But it's not surprising the Tetra was lost and presumed missing in action on July 20th, 1945.
Many important things have happened on July 20th, including me. That's my birthday. It's always good to know I'm in such august company. Okay, Admiral, don't just stand there, read the message. Aloud, by the way.
Well, there was one survivor, a sonar man named Hill, who's long since dead. He blamed the loss of the Tetra on its commander, Lieutenant Ryan. He claimed that he could have saved the sub, but lost his head, blundered, and doomed the vessel. That was 28 years ago.
That was the guy who was panicking and insisting they surrender. We'll learn later that he deserted his post and got out in an escape pod, leaving all the others to their fate. But right now, nobody knows that, so the whole world blames Lieutenant Ryan for the loss. And we're still waiting for him just to read the blasted thing.
Sorry, sir. This is our new man, Frank Worden, STS specialist. He just reported for duty, and I brought him to you as ordered.
Welcome aboard, Whitten.
Thanks.
I understand you're thoroughly trained in the use of our new subterrestrial scanner.
Yes.
Well, we're going to need it on this mission. I want you to uncrate it and have it aligned as soon as possible.
Aye, aye, sir.
Every time he goes to read the note, somebody butts in.
But to continue, this note gives the latitude and the longitude, and then it goes on to say, please help us. Cannot hold out much longer. Trapped in underwater cave. Only 5 of us are left. Myself, Lieutenant Tommy Wilson, Lieutenants Isaka Nakamura, Yeoman Berger Johnson, Torpedoman Cliff Bates. Signed, James Ryan, Lieutenant USNR Commanding.
That got Worden's attention. I get the feeling he knows someone on that list. The thing about this note is, it's dated a little over 6 months ago. Since it has a latitude and longitude, the Seaview is supposed to go find these guys. The coordinates will take them to a small volcanic island in the South Pacific.
Here, let me help you.
No. You still tremble from your last illness. Prudence suggests the wisdom of resting for a few more days. I'm strong. I'll dig for you.
No, you've all taken my place for the past week. It's about time I get back to work.
They're trying to tunnel out of here to the surface. A previous attempt caved in and killed 2 of their number. They can't dig more than a couple of feet at a time. Not only are they nearly 30 years older than when they got here, they aren't in the best of shape. They've gotten sick, they subsist on fish and what edible seaweed washes into the cavern. It's amazing they're alive at all. Some think the tunnel idea is ridiculous, but others insist they have to try something. Oh my, I used to have an oscilloscope that looked exactly like that one. It served me well for a good 20 years, and I finally sold it because I didn't do that stuff anymore.
Looks like all that current's doing the Watusi. Hey, how about putting you down for our AC-Doocy tournament tonight? It'll be a real ball.
No, thanks.
I guess you don't dig cards, huh?
The AC-Doocy I know is a form of backgammon. You don't use too many cards in that one.
I don't know. Take a look at the seismograph report.
Pressure. A lot of pressure, like a volcano on the verge of erupting.
It's coming from that island we're heading for.
That's because it's not just a volcanic island, it's an active volcanic island, as the men in the cave know all too well.
The beast beneath us still shows his ugly temper.
That's the 3rd shake today. It's more than it had all week.
Johnson! Bates! Come out of there!
My people will come. I know it.
He's convinced Japan won the war and now dominate the world, so they will come looking for him. When Ryan suggests they could have lost, he won't hear it. Such an idea is ridiculous. Never mind. They just barely get Johnson out, but Bates is the next casualty. Change the name of the episode to 4 of Us Are Left and send out another bottle. Admiral Nelson and Werder are in the flying sub, surveying the island and looking for possible caves. That's where their new gadget comes in. The show foresaw the rise of ground-penetrating radar. His machine scans below the surface and seeks out hollow places that could be caves. It's often a little mind-boggling how many such inventions Irwin and his co-workers foresaw. They have to submerge and search the underwater parts of the island, but they do find the cave. Now, the note said the cave was underwater, so the way they killed a bunch of runtime scanning the surface and looking down the crater makes me want to sing the padding song. But they did accomplish one thing, although without knowing it.
Listen, I hear something.
What?
It's a weird sound, sort of like an airplane.
Bear in mind, they've never heard a jet before. They have no way of identifying that sound because there's nothing to compare it to.
He's right. I hear it too. Someone's found us.
Yes, they have. Nelson and Werder have found the cave and they're starting in.
Rough going, as you can see. Treacherous current here. I could use the Seaview's electronic stabilizers. See it? The tunnel. I can't control it. We're caught in the current. We're being swept in. I can't.
In the cave, Nakamura is so convinced that his country trounced the United States and has now come for them, he went and put on his dress uniform that he's been saving all these years for this occasion. Now, by the time the Tetra went down, large portions of the Japanese populace were calling for the emperor to accept defeat, surrender, and stop the bloodshed. Japan had lost all the territory they previously conquered and were drawing their forces in to protect the home islands. Even so, in March, the Allies firebombed Tokyo with devastating results. He thought they could somehow rise from that and beat the United States. He refuses to believe any other possibility. Well, Nakamura, looks like we both lost and the Martians won. Let's go meet our new alien overlords. But, lose the uniform so they don't think we're hostile.
You can doubt no longer. My countrymen have come.
Your countrymen are mine, Nakamura. There's something wrong.
That something is Worden. He took a knock on the head and he's out cold. They make another bunk for him near Johnson. Why isn't it enough that they're people? People who are friendly and here to get you out of here? Why does it matter what artificial map line they were born behind? You do know that borders don't exist. They're not real things. They're ideas that we humans have put on pieces of paper so we can divide and exclude each other. And frankly, it's stupid. People are people. We have different appearances, different ideas, different likes and dislikes, and the things that make us the same are so much more important than the things that we let divide us. Ryan is a Caucasian man from America. Nakamura is an Asian man from Japan. Why isn't the key word in all of that man? But it's going to get worse.
Admiral, I wonder if
I know you've got a lot of questions. We can take care of that later.
Right now, I've got to check the flying sub, see if there's a way of repairing it and getting us all out of here.
Wait, repairing the what?
Admiral, that thing's a sub, And it flies?
The Admiral's right, Wilson. No questions now, except one, sir. When did the war end?
About a month after your submarine was sunk, Japan surrendered unconditionally.
One lousy month. It cost us 28 years.
That's too much for Nakamura. Now he's envisioning his beloved islands destroyed, flattened into oblivion, and made slaves to the Americans. He can't deal with it. Thing is, Japan was destroyed for about 10 years. Then suddenly they emerged as the world's #1 source for affordable electronics.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a Japanese transistor radio.
Me too. I had one. All my friends had one. They were everywhere. Japan tried to conquer the world by force and failed. So they tried to conquer the world by commerce and succeeded. By 1960, made in Japan was a cliche and sometimes an insult, but we kept buying the stuff. Maybe if Admiral Nelson tells him that part, Nakamura can feel better. The Seaview has reached the island and found the cave. It's big enough, so they're going in.
On collision course, full speed astern, full speed astern.
Aye, aye, sir.
They have enough forward momentum and there's a strong enough current pulling them into the tunnel that they're going to hit anyway. There's a collision screen they can close over the windows and they hit a glancing blow off the rocks, but are able to keep going. Is he planning to steal it? He forces his way into it while nobody's looking. Worden has awakened and the men are trying to tell him how happy they are to see him.
It's gonna take a lot of chocolate to get the fish out of my mouth, but it sure tastes good. I'm glad you got over that bump over your head. I guess you can't know how good it is for us to see you.
You're either Wilson or Ryan. Which?
This kid has a real attitude for some reason. What's his problem?
Lieutenant Wilson. There's Skipper Ryan, right there. Come on, I'll introduce you.
I'll introduce myself.
I have a feeling we're about to find out.
Oh, Lieutenant, this is Frank Worden who came in with me.
I'll give you my hand. My way. What's the meaning of this, Worden?
Very simple, Admiral. This man's my father.
Remember what Admiral Nelson said about that sonar man who escaped and blamed everything on Ryan? The public believed it. They harassed Worden's mother and persecuted her until she changed her name and moved to a new locale. But it all followed her, and eventually she died from the shame. And there's no way Ryan could have known any of this. He was tried and convicted in the court of really terrible people without any chance to defend himself. So Ryan's wife died early and his son hates him. I hope that sonar guy is proud of what he did. There's no opportunity to pursue it right now, though.
Look!
Nakamura scuttled the flying sub. Why?
You say that my country was defeated. You lie. The spirit of my people cannot be conquered. Have I not just proven it? Now we shall all die together. You in the humiliation of defeat, and I, myself, in honor.
Tell him what Japan has been doing for the past 28 years, Admiral. Explain what a powerhouse they've become. Though it's an open question whether he'd listen or not. He's so deep into his idea of honor and all that, he may have forgotten he's standing on a volcano. And I don't think the volcano agrees with his assessment of the situation. The Seaview is caught in that same intense current that dragged the flying sub and the Tetra in here. But up ahead, it's too narrow for the sub to get through.
Torpedo room. Prepare to fire one. Zero range.
We're too close, Lee.
Rig for explosion. All hands stand by. Fire one.
That one big rock in their way? Now it's many little rocks. And Chip should have had more faith in the Seaview than that.
You were born after I sailed on the Tetra. I didn't know I had a son.
We're all gonna die together. I'll see what difference it makes.
Makes a difference to me.
Why now?
I like to try and believe there's no such thing as a stupid question, but ones like that challenge me. Why now? Because he only just now found out about you, duh! He's been stuck in this cave. He didn't know you existed. He didn't know flying subs exist. Well, right now they don't, but you know what I mean. He asks about his wife, and Worden tells him in the cruelest way possible.
Tetra was lost about a month before I was born. And the news came that her hero husband was a coward and a murderer. You know what that did to her?
Again, that was not how it went down, but he had no way to tell anybody that. Maybe it's time to hear his side. But like all people carrying an impossibly heavy burden of hate, Worden doesn't believe Ryan has a side.
I saw you talking to your boy.
I tried to talk to him. He called me a coward and a murderer. I didn't get very far.
Worse, he doesn't know why Worden called him those things. Nelson needs to fill him in on what Mr. Hill did to his reputation. But like everything else in this episode, he won't get around to it for quite some time, so these two just get to stew in their own ideas until then. That seems mean.
Well, a man carries a belly full of hate. A few words aren't going to change him.
You said your submarine was on the way. If by some miracle they find us and get us out of here, then I'll tell the truth. Maybe he can accept it then.
Why? Why wait? Sit down with him, with Nelson as a mediator or moderator or mudinator or whatever you want to call it, and talk it out. Better to do it now in case you don't get out, no?
Skipper!
I found him hiding in the rocks, and he's proud of what he did.
Nakamura, why did you do this to us?
My country has been crushed, enslaved under the cruel heel of the enemy.
Tell him, Nelson. Why are you letting him believe this stuff? Tell him they won, just not the way he envisioned. If he knows that, he'll come around. Nelson is really screwing this up. These men need to know things. He's the only one who can tell them, and he's playing Silent Sam.
But I shall not be enslaved, nor shall I return to be subjected to further indignities. A perverse fate has willed that I have fought the final battle of the war.
Or to kill you right.
You have to love how they put all their differences and nationalism and everything else aside and worked together for 3 decades. There were no borders in this cave, no governments, no nations, no armies or navies or battling for resources, just a group of men. They were a textbook example of what we humans can accomplish when we're not finding stupid excuses to hate each other. And the moment their diligence is rewarded, they're back to fighting. Because one guy got nationalistic again.
We might have made it out of here.
He's our friend.
It's like this, Wilson. He may have reverted to type for a bit. Don't you do the same.
You would stand by me, old friend, after what I have done.
I think Nakamura just came to his senses. A little late, but at least he's getting there.
Can you find it in your heart to forgive me?
With his dying breath, Johnson did just that. Sic transit Johnson. But maybe a little good can come from that scene. Maybe.
I just saw a man die, Warden. Are we all gonna die, Admiral?
We haven't got a chance, and you know it now with that volcano ready to blow any second.
I also saw an act of forgiveness.
I know what you're driving at, Admiral. It's no use. Did you forgive a man who left a brand of coward on his wife and son?
He didn't do that. Other people did. Here's the thing. Especially during World War II, desertion under fire was a firing squad offense. One man, Eddie Slovic, actually suffered that fate after he ran away in the middle of a battle. The military took that very, very seriously. Running off to save your own skin and abandoning the men next to you was not forgivable. Hence, Mr. Hill wasn't about to tell the real story. He assumed Ryan and everyone else was dead and told his stories to cover his own deserter butt. If Werder is any kind of man, he owes it to Ryan to hear the rest of the story.
You think a coward can command and fight a submarine? You think a coward could survive in this miserable hole for all these years?
If he had been the panicked coward that Hill claimed he was, he never would have made it here. The sub would have sunk. He never would have kept up hope all these years and looked after not just his own men, but his enemy passenger as well. Nelson said when they get back, the Navy will probably reopen the investigation, and Ryan and the others have a lot to tell them.
Permission to come aboard, sir.
Permission granted, Lee.
Sorry I couldn't get the Seaview in any closer. She surfaced a couple of 100 yards away around the bend, sir.
Good. You can tell me how you did it later.
And their chances of getting to tell those things are getting better by the moment. It's a foot race to get out of here, get back to the sub, and get out of the cave before the volcano really blows, and a certain person isn't helping much.
Nakamura, we gotta get out of here. This whole place is gonna go sky high. No, you do not understand. I cannot return. You must save yourself.
Didn't Johnson's action get us past this by now? If you have to, punch him on the KO button and carry him. The race to escape the volcano is very well done, no duh, and exciting. There's just not a whole lot in it that calls for comment. Just how big is this eruption?
Scratch one volcano.
Big enough that it did a Mount St. Helens and blew itself to pieces. They lost the flying sub, and I hope that's not going to become a habit like it did with the mini-subs. Once they're out of it, Worden and Ryan go off to have a talk that's long overdue.
Eventually, they'll have a happy reunion. I shall never know such joy. I must return to my nation, knowing that it tastes nothing but the bitter gall of humiliation and defeat.
Tell him, Nelson! Why is he letting this poor man suffer like this? Instead, he tries to quote a Japanese poem. As badly as he does it, Nakamura can't help but correct him.
In spring, the broken apple blossom flutters down, faded and forgotten, to hide its lost beauty in the cold earth. And yet, the pathetic apple blossom has a timeless power. And on another spring, we rise into a new and stronger tree.
Okay, you have his attention and he's starting to understand. Tell him!
That's the philosophy of your own people, Lieutenant. But you forget, many springs have come and gone since the end of the war.
This is killing me. Just tell him his country is in great shape. You don't even have to give him details, just tell him something. I get what he's trying to do. He wants it to be a great surprise. But for all that he tries to understand the Japanese soldier mindset of 1945, he doesn't get it. Military victory was everything. The emperor was unbeatable. I suspect the only reason Nakamura didn't commit seppuku the moment he learned Japan had lost is because he didn't have a decent knife. Johnson managed to bring him around enough to not buck rescue anymore, but Nelson is expecting him to put aside a lifetime of this mentality and be a small child anticipating a present. He is not listening to what Nakamura is saying. Nakamura is going to go back home expecting Japan to be an all-new military power on equal with anybody in the world, when in 1965 they weren't even allowed to have a military. So he's going to be even more disappointed. He's used to commanding a warship and firing massive guns at the Americans. Throwing transistor radios at them just isn't the same thing.
I'm breathing underwater, I'm weightless through space. I'm soaring like an eagle all over this place. Creatures most will never see are waiting there to look at me, and all I gotta do is breathe underwater.
A month before Japan, so to the four of us are, there's no, actually severed. Fun fact, that Alan Sherman 12 Days of Christmas that I used, I heard that the first time ever on my very first Japanese transistor radio. You can't make this stuff up.